what an organic effort this is, because it's alive and it keeps changing, and and it feels like it's a newscast as much as it is a documentary.
I think we felt like we pulled a rabbit out of the hat for that last episode. You know, we thought the series was done after episode 4 originally, but then when the pandemic hit and then followed by George Floyd, we felt like, well, we don't want people to watch this series and mistakenly think they're looking at ancient history, you know, but to really see what's going on now. So we got back out in the streets and we made it and did it in record time for us. We don't usually make things that fast.
Right.
Say the least.
It's true. The filming on episode 5 began in April, and you know, here we are in October, and it's already been on the air. So it's a very quick turnaround.
What was the scramble in the editing room?
Well, I'm fortunate that I myself am an editor, and I have this terrifically talented co-editor, David Simpson, who's worked with me on a lot of projects. And I think we're both pretty fast, and we didn't have a choice. We had to be fast.
Mm.
Yeah. Now, Zach and I joke that if someone would just keep paying us, and we're very affordable, that we would just kind of keep making this series, you know, that every year we churn out a couple of episodes maybe.
Yeah, and we're joking, but we're really not joking.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking. I'd like to see it.
I'd like to see it. There's certainly enough to cover. Chicago is a vibrant city.
There's always something going on here.
Mm-hmm.
How many cameras did you have on the streets following all the protests in episode 5?
I mean, it was always mostly one camera out there, but for episode 5, it was either me and Zach, or it was my son Jackson. And he tended to work solo. He went to some of those protests. He got some of the most vivid stuff. That whole altercation with the cops where they arrest the guy and the young woman. That was Jackson. Yeah, that was Jackson. That was Jackson just going to film what he thought was going to be a peaceful protest that kind of went south. And so it was really, you know, we were, because of the COVID thing, we were very conscious of not at that point trying to pull in too many people into the mix. We were willing to put ourselves out there, but we didn't feel good. I guess I felt good enough about putting my son out there, but I don't know what that says about me as a father.
What does he think about that?
He loved it. I mean,
yeah.
he loved being on this project, and this is he's worked with us before on past projects.
I remember one night I was monitoring social media around unrest that was happening downtown, and I texted Jackson to let him know, you know, that this might be something to get, but he was already there. So, you know, he was 2 steps ahead of me.
Was there ever a moment, I saw that there was one moment where the police came up with his baton and said, you know, get away. Was there ever a moment you were really afraid, fearful?
Well, that was Jackson shooting, and he had a few little moments where the cops were not happy with him, and I just want to go on the record as saying I told him to not do anything that could put him in danger.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, and I don't think he was in any real danger. I mean, frankly, I'll tell you 2 things that help. One is he's white, and 2, he had a big camera.
Big camera, yeah.
And big cameras sort of communicate to cops that you're for real, you're not, you know, whatever. And they're more loath to get too physical with you because they don't want to end up on the evening news. They have no idea where this is going to end up. But we didn't want to follow everybody closely. We weren't interested in doing a political film in the more traditional political documentary sense, where you embed deeply with a candidate or 2, and you get all the backroom, you know, maneuverings and strategy and all that. We shot a fair amount of that with some of the candidates, but it didn't end up in the series because ultimately we wanted to take a kind of broader look at the political process of Chicago through this mayoral election.
The Lori Lightfoot story, in you're telling the story, she comes out of nowhere.
The funny thing is that we tried to follow her from the get-go. She might have been literally the first candidate that we actually reached out to say, we're doing this series or film. It was going to be a film then. We're doing this film, and this is what we're doing, and we'd love to, you know, film with you. And she was receptive personally, but her press people kept deflecting us and pushing us away because they thought that, I think two things. One is they didn't see how it was going to help her get elected, which it wouldn't. And secondly, they knew that she uses a lot of salty language. We found this out after the fact. And that because she uses a lot of salty language, they worried about how she would just cut loose. But so we ended up having to circumvent the press people to get to Lori, because Lori personally liked what we were doing and was supportive. So we would show up. Zach would find out that she was going to be out campaigning in a neighborhood. So we would show up and walk right past the press person and go right to Lori and say, "Hey, Lori, do you mind if we put a mic on you today?" And she'd say yes. And then we'd look over at the press person and they were giving us the eye.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, she liked having that tough demeanor and that tough reputation. She wanted everybody to know she was tough.
Yeah, the time we spent with her, we really enjoyed greatly because we found her refreshingly frank. But there'd be a lot of days where we would just go out and we'd have one thing on our schedule, like a press conference or a campaign stop for somebody. And then we'd wing it after that. And we didn't know where we were going to end up. And so that's kind of reflected in the series too. It's sort of like we're kind of ping-ponging all around the city because that's kind of the way we shot it, you know, and we liked that feeling of it, you know, that feeling that you don't know where you're going to be next when you're watching this series, because we didn't know where we were going to be next.
It's instructional to know where the actual neighborhoods are. You hear these names of neighborhoods, you don't really know where they are. But
and it's important. And it's important for folks who aren't familiar with the geography in Chicago to realize the differences in, you know, without saying it. I mean, we're showing the maps and showing the geography, and you're seeing, you know, different racial makeup. You're seeing, you know, where more investments happening or less investments happening. And so, yeah, that's an important orientation for folks who aren't familiar.
Well, and after being a lifelong Chicagoan, I mean, I actually learned a few names for areas that I didn't realize were named that.
Yeah, that was a whole thing.
Well, there's a lot of neighborhoods in Chicago.
There's a lot. 77, yeah.